What's up guys, welcome to another video. Now this is the last video of this short series where I've talked about the 5 ways I like to use my hands, the 5 ways I like to use my leg. Then the last video that we uploaded was my 5 top drills, or the 5 drills that I do the most on a day-to-day basis. Now I will end this series with the 5 exercises that I use the most, and I find these exercises so important because when I get to the horse show or I get to training the maneuvers at a higher level with high intensity, being able to use these exercises as training tools really effectively, where I don't feel like I need to be doing this exercise repeatedly in between trying to tune up a maneuver or stuff like that, and just really like tiring my horse to where my exercise is not an effective tool. So being able to do these really effectively really helps me get the most out of my horses when doing, you know, high intensity maneuvers or preparing them for a horse show. So with that said, I found that instead of just sitting here and just kind of walking you through these 5 exercises like I usually do, and giving you just sort of a summarized version of what we actually upload on the Comfort Zone Horse Training video series, I figured that this time I'd treat you with the full content that we actually uploaded on the Comfort Zone Horse video series. So without further ado, let's go to the arena and let's get to it. So first, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to push to control your horse's inside shoulder. Okay, so we're going to use the number 1 hand position, which is going to be right above the shoulder. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to push our horse's shoulder out. Okay, so our hand is lifting the shoulder and it's moving just a little bit across the neck and pushing that shoulder out. Okay. So you can do this by keeping your legs neutral. If you notice here, I'm just driving my horse forward into the bridle. Today, or at the moment, he's a little bit more lazy than usual, so I'm having to sit a little bit deeper in my pockets and bring my legs back a little bit more in a driving motion to keep him going. But I would rather just be doing a slight pump of in and out with my legs. But if I feel that he needs a little help, you'll see me sit deeper in my pockets, bring my legs back and push him forward. Okay, so once I have that forward motion and I feel that I can push that shoulder out and control that shoulder, then I can start to scissor my legs like we talked about and bring my left leg a little further back and bring my outside leg a little bit more forward and push his shoulder out and his hip out at the same time. Okay, so earlier when we did only the shoulder out, we got the front end walking underneath itself, so my legs are more neutral. Only thing we're doing is pushing the shoulder out, so the front end is in a forward motion, kind of crossing over. Once I change my leg position, then I'm asking the hip to do the same movement as the front legs, and then I'm having a crossover in the back and a crossover in the front. This is very similar to the side pass. So the next exercise is going to be the side pass. Now the side pass is one of the things that you want to be teaching to your horse very early on in their training journey, because it is the part that, in my opinion, is probably one of the hardest things to really teach a horse to do really good, but it is the most go-to and effective and sort of neutral way of controlling your horse's body. Sometimes we move the shoulder, sometimes we move the hip, sometimes we move everything together, sometimes we move everything in opposite directions and inverted. But the side pass is going to be somewhat always at the main core of it all. Okay, so the best way to teach a horse a side pass is either using the fence or using something like that, so that they understand that they just need to move laterally. But the type of side pass that I'm talking about now is a type of side pass where they're moving laterally, but always with a little bit of forward motion. What I mean by that is that when a horse side pass in the back or in the front, they should be crossing over the opposite leg, not under. Okay, so if they're doing under, they're sucking back on you a little bit, and that may cause trouble. So always make sure. This is why that in talking about the 5 exercises, I started with moving the shoulder out, because this is how I can teach my horse to move away from hand and leg pressure while keeping their forward motion. Once I feel I have that, then I can straighten him up, control the shoulder a little bit more, and now move him in a side pass in that direction. Okay, so once you go from the difference between, let's say, moving the shoulder out and pushing the hip out, the reason that it's called shoulder out, hip out is because the left side is in, okay? So I am working my left diagonal, not my right diagonal in this situation. If I bring my horse's head to the right a little bit and I prioritize my right hand with my left leg, then I'm switching to working my right diagonal. So if I'm doing this like this, what I'm doing is I'm pushing my horse's hip and shoulders out of the left diagonal, but I'm working my left diagonal. When my horse perfectly gives me a shoulder out, hip out like this, and I release, then I go back to the left, and I should have a horse that is perfectly in this left diagonal. See how he wants to get into a spin now? He's like, what do we do? You lined me up perfectly for something. I'm ready to do something. So he was thinking may have been the turn or whatever, but this is a very, very good way to set up your horse for something, because you are really lifting his shoulder in the most effective way possible, so that when you release and you go that direction, the horse is in the perfect position to execute whatever you're asking. So you have to be able to make the difference between this and using and prioritizing your right hand, to where now I'm working the right diagonal. So the right diagonal here is, so I'm side passing my horse towards his right diagonal. So I'm going to be applying pressure with my outside leg, which is cueing my horse to execute something, and my inside leg's job is to keep my horse to going forward. So my go-to movement is going to be an in and out movement, sort of a pumping movement, and I'm going to use that as hard as I need to feel that my horse has forward motion. Eventually, I just definitely want to be pushing air around. I don't want to be spurring my horse, or I don't want to be having to bump so hard with my calf. I would just like to push air around, and that should be enough for my horse to understand. So if I feel that my horse kind of gets sucked back on me and is not really extending its range of motion through that side pass, then my initial my instinct reaction is going to be to increase the movement of my leg, not necessarily increase the impact of the movement. But then if that doesn't work, then occasionally you may need to give him a good smack with your leg in order for them to respect that movement, because once you cue your horse to side pass, your inside leg is what's going to help your horse remember that he needs to go forward. And although that he's not really walking, that he's side passing, even if he's not really gaining any ground going forward, you are still controlling the inside shoulder and the forward motion with that inside leg. So if I see a lot of people side pass by just wide opening this leg, and I think that is just it's the intention is good by opening the door wide, but you can have that same opening of the door by using your leg in the type of movement necessary to really control your horse's step into that side pass. All right, in this next exercise, we're going to be combining pushing the hip of the horse and pushing the shoulder out. So occasionally when we are controlling the horse's body, it's going to happen in some cases. Let's say, especially if you're going to be teaching the lead change or counter-cantering, there's going to be situations where you have to actually have the shoulder going out. Okay, so you're lifting that shoulder and really pushing the shoulder out and pushing the hip in at the same time. Okay, this is one of my favorite exercises to do when setting up a horse for a spin or setting up a horse for a lead change. Or let's say that I asked my horse to do a lead change and he missed that lead change and he drug a lead in the back, or he only dropped his shoulder and changed lead in the front. So what I would do then is I may break to a walk and then just push his hip in and push his shoulder out at the same time. Okay, so this is not something that I will be like expecting my horse to really push his hip that much that way and push his shoulder that much that way, because it's not something that physically he can do that easily. But I need my horse to understand very quickly that when my hand is here, he needs to respect it and move away from it whenever it's asking for that shoulder to stay up, and that when my leg is on him at the same time, he needs to get away from that leg by driving his hip under himself. Okay, so basically this is just a very accentuated way of telling my horse, push your hip under yourself. So drive with this outside hind leg underneath you and lift your inside shoulder and reach out straight in front of you where my hand is pointing with your inside leg. So this is channeling that energy through there. If sometimes this is not working, all we're going to do is increase the hand pressure and increase the leg pressure, which is going to cause that horse to move that shoulder out more and bring that hip in more, so that when we come back to a neutral position, he respects that. So basically, once your horse horse is just a little bit lazy on your leg or lazy on your hand, just increase the pressure of both by releasing a little bit the pressure of the other two, which are the aids, which is the inside leg and the outside hand. So releasing the pressure of those two aids a little bit while increasing the pressure of the driving hand and driving leg is gonna bring that hip in more and that shoulder out, and really get your horse to focus on what's on the key areas that you're that you're cueing your horse with. Okay, so the fourth exercise is going to be to push your hip around your horse. Okay, so again, going back to what I said about the side pass being sort of at the core of all of those exercises, assuming that I'm trying to side pass my horse to the right here. So I'm controlling his shoulder fairly well, and I'm cueing my horse to push its hip over with my outside leg, and keeping the forward motion and controlling the inside shoulder with my inside hand and the movement of my inside leg. But assuming that my horse is really not, is pushing a little too hard on my hand here, what I could do is I could release the leg, the pressure from this leg here, and just do a shoulder out to remind him to get away from this hand a little bit better, and get away from this rein, and so that I can control and have control over that shoulder better. But if that is not the problem, if the problem is the fact that your horse isn't getting away from your leg, so then what I'm going to do at that point in time is keep this a little bit more neutral here over with my hands, and put priority to my outside leg, cueing my horse to push its hip around. So what I'm going to do is, in this instance, is I'm going to keep the front end walking. I'm not going to be trying to push it that way. I'm going to make sure that I can keep it walking, but then I'm going to be pushing my horse's hip around myself. Okay, so this is telling my horse, hey, when I push with my outside leg, I need you to get that hip moving away as well. And once I feel like I have that, then I can go back to my side pass, okay, right here. All right, so I feel that whenever I have a horse that is very broke, is a horse that, and you will see this in the upcoming exercises, is once I can go and make a really sharp turn either towards their diagonal or in a counter-canter away from the diagonal, and have full control and no shift in the body position, no resistance, no drop of the shoulder, no loss of control of any body parts of the horse, just that the horse is driving harder with its hip under himself and lifting its shoulder in order to execute that, let's say, that counter-canter sharp turn. If I feel that my horse is not able to do that, then that means that I may not have enough control over my horse's body through these drills. So then this exercise here, I might break my horse down to a walk or a trot and say, hey, remember that when my hands are here and my outside leg is there and I'm pumping with my inside leg, that means that you need to go forward with your front legs, lift your shoulder, and use your hip more. Okay, so and so this exercise is a little bit more advanced. It's okay if you're not able to do this now, and it's very important to have good control over the shoulders before having control of the hip itself. But at some point in time, you need to be able to push that hip around you at the walk, trot, and lope with as much ease as you do moving the shoulders around. This is going to be a defining moment in your training journey that's going to define your horse as getting pretty broke. Okay, so the final exercise is going to be the step around. So the step around, if you've seen my program and you followed all of the exercises of my foundation training, you will see that it is one of the first thing I teach my horses to do, and it's something that I stay after throughout their entire training program. I never let this get out of hand because it's so important to have at all costs. So this part is, so whenever I'm walking here and I teach my horse to lift its shoulder, okay, see how I lift my hand here and he's lifting his shoulder, okay, so now I have control over that shoulder. I can move my hand out and that shoulder goes out. But now if I move my hand in here, what happens is that I want that horse to step in perfectly inside. So I'm going to keep my hand up here until I feel that my horse is really looking where he's going and he's making a really good effort of lifting its inside leg and stepping it laterally to the side. Okay, I want to actually see that leg step away from the shoulder. So if he's making too short of a movement and I can't see that foot really stick out in that movement, I'm going to keep asking until I can see that leg really stick over to the side. So this movement is still requires forward motion because, again, like I said in the side pass, you want that outside leg to cross over, not under, okay? So if I'm side passing to the left, this is the movement that I'm going to be getting. If I want to do a crossover, I'm going to go from this forward motion movement to this movement, okay? So the hind end is going to be anchored into the ground and the front end is going to cross over around that hind end in a forward forward motion. So you don't want to let your horse stop their forward motion or suck back when teaching them or doing this exercise. So it's very important to do it going forward. Okay, so what I like to do is I'm going to lift both my hands above the shoulder, and then I'm going to lift my inside hand a little bit more, support with the outside hand, and open my inside leg a little bit more. Okay, so whenever I feel that my horse steps in really good, I will release. Okay, so this is just a very nice crossover of the front legs while keeping the hind end anchored down. Okay, and this is very good exercise when training, and you will see a little bit later on once we start dancing around with our horse, but this is a very good exercise to help teach your horse steering whenever you're asking him to go that direction. Let's say he doesn't respond, so let's do a little bit of this step around until he commits to it. There, he's committed. So now I could go out and I could ask him to steer that direction. If he doesn't, I can say, all right, let's do a step around. Okay. This is also going to be an effective exercise whenever working your turnaround. If you have to do in any maneuver that you're doing, you have to do some turnaround, and you feel that your horse just like that, like is not thinking inside, not looking inside, not crossing over properly, and what you want to do is just lift your hands above the shoulder, lift your inside hand a little bit more to lift that inside shoulder until you control it and it steps perfectly inside like that. There we go, and then we let go and reward. So controlling your inside shoulder is going to be the key element. Again, I go back to saying this is the first thing that you should be able to do. Once you lift your hand, you should have control over that shoulder. If you bring it here, you should be able to cross over to the outside and push that shoulder out. If you move it towards the inside, you should be able to have a crossover towards the inside into a turnaround. And if you push it forward there, then you should have an elevated shoulder, an accentuated stride, so that you can really teach your horse to be forward into its diagonal in order to better do rundowns, lead changes, or whatever else that you need your horse to do that requires going someplace and having some forward motion.
Guys, that's it for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you found any value in it, please give it a like. Let me know in the comments down below which exercise was your favorite, or if you have any questions about those exercises. This is a good way for us to communicate, so I will be looking through the comments and hoping that some of you guys have some pertinent questions to where we can start a discussion about this, or potentially even giving me some idea for future videos. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so you don't miss out on new upcoming videos. And until the next one, take care.